Hello, everyone. Let's talk a little bit about the Portuguese tech ecosystem and the next decade of it. But first, let's have a glimpse of the near past of this. Miguel, what were the main challenges in this near past? How do you come to get here and talk to the next decade?
Good afternoon, everyone. I think the last 10 years has been basically the inception of what the Portuguese ecosystem didn't have, and I think now we're in a very different stage, not only because we have WebSummit around, but I remember that my first Series A round, there was no venture capitalists in Portugal other than Armilad and probably a couple other people. The largest tech benchmark for Portuguese companies, probably Nova Base, listed in the company stock exchange at around 70 million euros. And 10 years later, you have 7 unicorns, a lot of good, interesting, small, early-stage venture capital money from Portugal. You have a bunch of international Tier 1 investors having invested in Portugal. So I think it's a radically new landscape, but however, there's definitely challenges. In terms of, I think the main challenge I would see in the last 10 years, Humberto hasn't yet exited his current company. The founders of the other 7 unicorns of Portuguese DNA, they also haven't exited. So we haven't really had the opportunity to have people who've made it, the Cristiano Ronaldos of the tech world, really fostering the next decade of entrepreneurs. So hopefully that's what's going to happen.
Teresa, what was the key factor in this journey until this day?
Oh, we have so many. Good afternoon, everyone. So I think in the last 10, 11 years, we made a very good job bringing the ecosystem until now, until here, the stage that we are now. Some factors helped. As Miguel mentioned, venture capitalist firms developed a lot in Portugal, of course, but not only. We have a very good academia, and the preparations of our very good, brilliant minds into the entrepreneurship stage. So develop academia and entrepreneurship at the same time. But also the network of incubators, accelerators, the help of the government, and the mingle of all of this. People helping together, working for the same purpose. This is very important.
Yeah, Humberto, the cooperation between all these agents was a key factor also?
Yep. I think that initially what we saw was there was a lot of tech people, and tech people were collaborating, and we were all getting together, and this was exciting, and there was good money in being an engineer, I guess. And I think that as we progressed, we've noticed and started noticing that it's much more important now to build the businesses, and people are much more business-minded. Even engineers, in the beginning, they would not ask business questions. They did not know what ARR was. They did not know what a funding round was, etc. And now everyone's getting much more mature. And so I think that the collaboration started at the technical level, and now it's going to the business level. People are starting to talk the same language of business. And I think the next step is even commercial collaboration, right? Like using a lot more products from the community, etc.
What is critical for the next steps? And now, Miguel, we are entering the subject, the next decade. What is real critical? Do you see a short-term horizon, or you find a long-term vision of this?
I hope we have a short-term plan with a long-term ambition. But I would say, I think short-term, there's clearly fuck-ups in the ecosystem, like stock options. It's something that actually the current government, which now doesn't exist, but Orçamento is trying to fix some of those kind of early concepts of stock options, because if you really take the risk, and my mother wanted me to go into McKinsey, actually he ended up going, I didn't. So my risk profile was really high, right? So I couldn't have, I had to start my company when I was 22 years old, taking all that risk and then being highly taxed, plus all the other employees that choose to join a startup versus a good corporate job. They need to be compensated for that risk. And the stock options is something that is actually much better than it was. I think it can be much better going forward. And I think at the same time, the really good thing is we have benchmarks that we can look into, right? There's 7 companies that are these unicorn labels. You have a lot more deal flow, a lot more people actually aspiring to be tech entrepreneurs and working in the tech ecosystem. A very big difference in 2012, actually, when I started Geeing Places, it was very hard for me to convince someone to move from Berlin, London, or San Francisco over to Lisbon. Now it's a really cool place to be. And therefore, if you can have that engineering talent plus the business savviness, I think we can really create something good, because the Portugal market is very small. So from the very get-go, you start thinking internationally, which I think is a great thing for the market.
Humberto, Miguel talked about stock options and legal framework. I understand that should be a near term or near future challenge. Would you add something on this subject?
Well, I think that's, he's absolutely right. I would add a little bit, which is, I think we need a lot more engineers as well. So I think even the public organisms need to just build more universities or increase more universities or sponsor more private engineering degrees. And then also we need to bring in people from other functions like medicine and biotechnologies and design and HR and all of these other things to imbue, because software does not live in a vacuum, right? And now it's just mostly, or at least in the beginning, engineers trying to understand a functional problem, like TalkTech trying to understand call centers, and Feedzai trying to understand financial services, right? But now that we already have all these things, I think you can incorporate those into the business, much like Sword Health, right? That is in the health ecosystem.
But that's an academic challenge also?
No, I think it's a practical one. I think, engineers were the heroes of the last 10 years. And I think now engineers and founders have to invest in the other functions and say, now everyone can be a hero. And you have to have a lot of empathy and understand the problem and go attack those issues that many, many industries have, obviously supported by technology, either hardware or software. But I think it's mostly a practical issue. We first went towards where it was more comfortable, pure software, and selling software for software engineers. That's also a big category. Like you have Codacy and Babel and all of those things that sell internally. But I think the next more interesting challenges are businesses that really touch broad sectors like, food, hospitality, housing, education, all of those things. We see them on the newspapers. I think we just need to incorporate more people and make more people the heroes. Yeah.
Coming from Portugal Ventures, you're not a minister, not a Secretary of State, not an MP, but what can the public sector do to address these concerns they have?
What we do is to serve market failures. We have 3 types of market failures, and that's what we work to prevent to stop happening. One is the size of the companies. There was a market failure in pre-seed. I think we have done a good job to solve that, to grow startups until the phase until the stage that the private ones come and invest in a more safer way. And this is a way to develop the ecosystem.
But you would like to have more private partners in this journey?
We have a lot of private partners. We co-invest with almost every fund placed in Portugal and some abroad, because the other market failure that we didn't solve yet, it's the growth phase. And for that, we need help of the foreigners, of course, the big venture capitalists from the United States and the other places. But let me ask also for the help of the Portuguese, the institutionals, because as Portuguese, we have to signalize the other countries in the world that we do believe in our ecosystem. So many of the funds that invest in other than venture capital should invest more in this area.
Like pension funds?
Like pension funds, very good example. Because it's not charity, it's a way of winning money also. But for that, we need these histories, these good founders to talk about make publicity of these good histories in order to settle us as a country in the growth phase also. That we didn't manage to solve yet, so we ask for the help of everyone. But
yeah, Miguel.
On the other super quick notes, like it would be great that pension funds can do it, but there's actually tax implications and regulatory frameworks that actually hinder that. So for example, with Shilling, we actually have really good institutional corporate LPs that have invested in Shilling, like Fidelidad and others. But the challenge then, when you actually talk about really big institutional money as pension funds, then there's like loss ratios and other things that really don't make this as an attractive asset class as it should. And if you look into the US, the really large pension funds are behind most of the venture capital money. And in Portugal, we haven't actually looked at that as a really good way. And the returns are there. You actually have the success stories. So I think it's up to us to get our shit together and do it.
Teresa, you were saying more about this?
More about this, about the market failures.
Yeah.
One is growth. The other one is geographically, because the ecosystem and the entrepreneurship in Portugal is not only developed in Lisbon and Porto. We have a lot to show in other regions of the country, and that's what we do also, to develop the ecosystem and entrepreneurship in other areas of the country. Let's see, Braga, Aveiro, Coimbra, Azores, Madeira. I can mention all of them.
Yeah,
so.
I'm seeing the smile in Humberto's face about this.
Yeah, well, I think that the talent can work from anywhere, right? We know that we are living in this hybrid remote model, and it seems to be working well for the majority of companies to have at least a component of remoteness. I think that it's also counterintuitively, I do think that the largest markets like Lisbon and a much smaller market, Porto, should have some more centers inside the cities themselves. Like one thing that I really struggle is that there is no place, there's no bar in Porto where I can hang out and there's other engineers and other entrepreneurs there, and that there's really no place. Like the people just, because I think Portugal is so small and we all have friends from our childhoods and we have our families, so no one really gets out of their social scope and into other places where all these ideas really happen. So kind of like in a week here, you have a lot of ideas pumping because people are like bumping into each other. And I feel like Porto doesn't have this. There's like not even a little bar where people hang out.
Open one.
Yeah, well, after we finish this challenge, building the spreadsheet, maybe we're going to build a bar.
I think out of there from Shilling, maybe that's a good thing. In a year from now, you should have a bar in Lisbon, maybe Porto, where actually people can hang out, like the Shilling hub.
Yeah, sponsor the coffee or something.
Yeah, they want to make business, okay? About investing, Portuguese investment in Portuguese projects, Miguel, do you think there's a margin to do much better, like Teresa was asking for?
Absolutely. I think Portugal Ventures is a great example of someone that actually took advantage. And to be honest, the interesting thing, the private sector lost 3-0 against the public sector, because if you think about 7 unicorns, how much private capital of Portugal was invested in those 7 unicorns? We absolutely got smashed, right? We didn't invest at all, less than 1%, I believe, of the total capital invested in 7 Portuguese unicorns. It was Portuguese money. If you think about all the value creation generated by 7 unicorns, other than employment or actually euros, it was basically sent abroad to most cases. And if we should realize that, then hopefully not only with the public sector support, but the private money, the big family offices, the big institutional investors of Portugal should capitalize on that talent. And they should, hopefully in the next 10 years, they should put more money directly into companies, but also into probably Shilling. But there's really a lot of interesting good VCs in Portugal that are ready to invest in this kind of next unicorns. And we should realize that we fucked it up in the last 10 years.
Teresa, the equation is putting more money and then you get unicorns, or it will be a very far journey for this? Because the question is, can we expect to have the unicorns adventure at the same rhythm we have now?
I don't know about that. We don't work to raise unicorns. Of course, that we feel very happy when they come, but there are very, very good companies that are not unicorns yet, or maybe they are not going to be unicorns, but they are making a great job for the Portuguese economy. And the thing is, we would like to have conditions not to prevent that they go abroad, but if they go, it is their option, not a necessity. That's what we see today. Because if you are American fund, you put big money in a company, you want them to go there. So it's out of necessity. That's what we really would like to prevent.
Humberto, we started talking about the networks from the journey until this day, and now this network, Portuguese network, has to flourish in terms to give more support to each other, because we were mentioned before in the early talk about the lack of buying Portuguese to the other Portuguese company.
Yeah, I think that it's something that we as Portuguese people, we love buying international stuff. You know, like my shoes, my pants. I don't know about the T-shirt. Maybe it is Portuguese, but most of the stuff we buy is foreign, and it doesn't have to be, right? We trust the talent from Portugal, and talent is the hardest part. So we should also be buying software from the Portuguese companies and services from Portuguese companies. I think that it happens on two levels, and both of them are a little bit cultural, and both are a little bit new of this industry. And one of them is just that managers and founders and CEOs have to give the budget decisions to the teams, right? So that they decide, so that it's not us imposing them, or we have this warped view of what tool they should use. And the second part is just helping the teams make the best choices. I think in Portugal, we talk a lot about productivity and our GDP, which is lower per capita, and etc. And a lot of the factors for productivity are software and capex. And we actually don't invest enough in tools. Like when you look at the charts, we invest less than half of what other large countries, and much less than half than the Americans invest on a per employee basis on software, even relative to the salary, right? And so I think we need to consume more software so that our people are more productive. And I think it also should start with the Portuguese companies, right? I think Coverflex, I think, has been one of the first companies which Miguel is the current CEO of. They are one of the companies that is more prevalent among Portuguese business. Almost all startups use Coverflex, and I think this has to happen more. There's amazing services being sold by Portuguese companies. We just have to buy more from them as well.
Yeah. Finally, I would like to talk about external factors. When I get the numbers from Coverflex, I see that you want to duplicate your users to 150,000 users on Coverflex. So this in the middle of a world with two wars, inflation, interest rates high, and the political crisis in Portugal. So these external factors are apart from all this development you have?
I think looking at our example, we thrive in economic downturn. I think both the VC industry, to be honest, as well as some companies like products like Coverflex, because we save people money, right? We save companies money and we save employees. Actually, to be honest, even on the VC side, the economic downturn, so when someone is losing is because most of the time someone was winning. And in the case of like even venture capital, this is the best time, probably the best vintage you have to invest in the next 10 years, right? Because valuations are low, there's a lot of talent. Maybe there's not that many people working for like a lot of other unicorns because they're not thriving. So there is like a really good opportunity for you to invest. So I think the cycles, they're not only cyclical, but they might be actually ones against the others. And with Coverflex, we managed to grow because it's remote, and therefore there's a great resignation movement where we need to invest more in our people on a remote basis, and Coverflex helps that, as well as helping them making more money at the end of the month, as well as saving companies money. And then at a shilling, it's a great time to invest because there's a lot of good talent, much better than 10 years ago, with relatively fair terms for us to invest in.
So instability is not so bad for the business, for this business?
Warren Buffett has some famous saying, right? Like, when the tide is low, that's where you should be looking at everything to buy.
That's one of my favorite quotes. Teresa, what do you think about this?
This is not a very good time to ask investors to invest in funds of venture capital, but because the interest rates are high and we are seen as an alternative. Maybe it should not be seen as alternative, but a regular financing instrument. We have to make this path. It depends on all of us, of course, and not only. But as Miguel said, now we have lots of funds in Portugal in place, a mix with private and public, because the Banco Português de Fomento deployed a lot of money in this sector. So we have the financing part in the private, the mix of private and public. For now it's okay, but the competitions for the startups to be invested, I think that will be the next play to roll. It's going to be maybe more difficult for a startup, but the good projects will always have money. And the valuations, of course, with this movement are low, so a very good business and very good exits in maybe 2-3 years, I don't know, but...
Humberto, what's your take on this?
Well, it's a mixture of the two. I think for sure investment is harder to get or in worse conditions, but I think everything else, it's very sad. We are in the middle of wars and all of this confusion, but to get users and to develop products, I think it's the best time you could get. And I think we've grown like more than 10x this year, and I think it will only continue. There's an acceleration force, and if you are in the right place, the tide will be raised for everyone. Yeah.
How do you retain your talents, your engineers and so on to work for you?
Yeah. Well, I think that the only trick there is to give them the best challenges, the hardest things to build, and people are motivated. There's a big component of money. There's always a big component of money, but it's not the only component. I think if we are building a spreadsheet, it's a very exciting topic. Naturally, people flock. If we could grow 10 times our number of employees, we would grow 10 times the number of employees very quickly. It's not a matter of attraction. I think you just have to go for the hardest, boldest version of whatever you're trying to build. People will go to you, even if you don't have as much money to pay them as last year.
Great talk. It's the talk about the next decade of Portuguese tech. Applause for them. See you next time.
Thank you.